and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Sky News get the full story first.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah. The battlefield is outside the barricades. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent. It's really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. The white heat in the White House, the meeting between Ukraine's president and Donald Trump that descended into a slanging match.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful. You're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty.
Come back when you're ready for peace, Donald Trump tells Volodymyr Zelenskyy as he leaves without a much-heralded deal over minerals. Well, after his White House mauling, the message from many European leaders is, you're not alone. But one senior Russian calls it a brutal dressing down. Also tonight, the setback in the condition of Pope Francis as he suffers a sudden worsening and breathing crisis in hospital.
So the evidence is there that she was naming him, and I was flagging that she was naming him.
The teenager who faked a grooming scandal also named at least one real abuser, Sky News can reveal. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Good evening. The course of the war in Ukraine may have irrevocably changed during a disastrous 10-minute public row between Donald Trump and the country's president, Volodymyr Zelenskyy. As they repeatedly spoke over each other and Donald Trump's deputy, J.D. Vance, weighed in, the American leader accused his counterpart of being disrespectful and gambling with World War III. A planned news conference was then cancelled, and Ukraine's leader told on social media by Donald Trump to return only when he is ready for peace. Well, tonight we'll assess the impact of this unprecedented public argument and hear the reaction from the United States, Europe, and Russia. But first, from Washington, our U.S. correspondent Mark Stone reports.
There had been huge anticipation for this meeting, of course, but no one was prepared for how it would unfold. It had been little over a week since the American president had called Zelenskyy a dictator, comments that shuddered Europe. This surely was the reset moment, a moment of such profound consequence to find the common ground. And yet, from the moment they met, it felt frosty.
He's all dressed up today.
And with a comment on his look, almost like belittlement from Trump to Zelenskyy. At the start, the trappings and the formality of an Oval Office meeting like this obscured what was about to come.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to have President Zelenskyy of Ukraine.
Because from that, it turned. First, this question.
Why don't you wear a suit? Why don't you wear a suit? Do you own a suit?
Yeah, problems.
A lot of Americans have problems with you not respecting.
I don't
the
have
dignity
such.
of office.
I will wear a costume after this war will finish.
Okay.
Yes, maybe one.
Maybe something like this.
like yours. Yes. Maybe something better. I don't know.
But the real trigger was the vice president's assertion that Zelenskyy's strategy with Biden had been a failure.
The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy.
Zelenskyy hit back, saying the failure was to trust Putin.
He broken this ceasefire. He killed our people, and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it.
And from there it spiraled.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are
Mr.
not
President,
strong...
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to...
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories.
During the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You don't
God
know
bless.
that.
You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering on
position
this
to
question.
dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly
this.
what
I'm not
You're
dictating.
in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
You
We're
will-
going to feel very
you will
good.
Feel influence.
We're going to feel very
I'm
good and
telling
very
you,
strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed
From the
yourself
very-
to be in a
from
very
the very
bad position,
beginning
and he
of the
happens
war.
to be right about
From
it.
the very beginning of the war.
You're not
Mr.
in a good
Brown,
position.
I
You
was
don't have
in
the cards right now. With us, you start
I'm
having
not playing
cards.
cards.
But right now, you
I'm
don't.
very
Yeah, you're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're
I'm
gambling
the
with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people.
You think
You're gambling with World War III.
what do you
You're
speaking about?
gambling with
What are you
World
speaking
War
about?
III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country.
I'm
That's
with
back
all
to you.
respect to your
Far
country.
more than a lot of people said
wearing
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once? This
A lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting,
today.
have you said thank
Even
you?
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States
what
of
are you
America
speaking about?
and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you
He's
can...
not speaking loudly. He's not
Yeah.
speaking loudly. Your country is
Can I-
in big
can-
trouble.
can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No.
Can
You've
I
done a lot
answer?
of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
Look at the reaction here. Oksana Markarova is Ukraine's ambassador to the United States.
You're not
I
winning.
know.
You're not winning this. you have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through
I
this
said
stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment,
You
and you
voted
men
for
are
your
brave,
president.
but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have
You
our
invited
military
me-
equipment,
You invited
if
me
you
to
didn't
speak.
have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3
okay?
days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days, this is something
Maybe
new.
less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this, I tell you.
Just say thank you.
I said a lot of times thank you to American people.
Accept that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong.
You have to be thankful. You don't have the
I'm
cards.
thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying.
tell you
You're
again,
running
I
low
know.
on soldiers.
Don't-
Listen,
don't, please,
you're running
Mr.
low on
President.
soldiers. It would be a damn good thing.
Mr.
And then
President.
then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I wanted this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
with guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
You got to be more thankful. Because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
One more question from Mr. Vice President. I'm sorry.
It's going to be a tough deal to make. Because the attitudes have to change.
Unfolding in front of the world's cameras, a diplomatic earthquake, an implosion of a relationship, an unraveling of an alliance, and a gift for Vladimir Putin.
Let me tell you, Putin went through a hell of a lot with me. He went through a phony witch hunt where they used him and Russia. Russia. You ever hear of that deal? The problem is, I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing. All right, I think we've seen enough. What do you think, huh? This is going to be great television, I will say that. All right, we'll see what we can do about putting it together. Thank you. Thanks. Yes.
On the other side of the White House, in the East Room, the stage was literally set for the signing of the minerals deal, the outer contours of Trump's peace plan for Ukraine. But then Zelensky's presidential car pulled up to the West Wing. Everything was changing fast. The signing and the press conference cancelled, and Ukraine's president told to leave.
Mr. President, is there no deal? Mr. President, can you tell us what happened? Is the deal off?
What an extraordinary moment this has been. A little under 3 hours inside the White House, no news conference, and the Ukrainian president is off. And listen to this, the immediate reaction from Senator Lindsey Graham, top Republican, a supporter of Ukraine and a partner to Europe.
Somebody asked me, am I embarrassed about Trump? I have never been more proud of the president. I was very proud of J.D. Vance.
Do you think President Zelenskyy needs to resign to resume these peace talks?
He either needs to resign and send somebody over that we can do business with, or he needs to change.
In this moment now, it is hard to see quite where this goes from here, where Zelenskyy goes from here. He will head to London for Sunday's summit, to the arms of Europe's leaders, who will be as bewildered by all this as he surely is. Mark Stone, Sky News, at the White House.
Well, Sir Keir Starmer's successful trip to Washington feels a lot longer than a day ago this evening. But the Prime Minister will have a major role in trying to pick up the pieces when he hosts President Zelenskyy and other European leaders at a meeting on Sunday. Many of them sent messages of support to the embattled president tonight. Our People and Politics correspondent Nick Martin reports.
President Trump, can you get a peace deal done in Ukraine?
Yes.
The Prime Minister and the President just 24 hours ago, like old friends.
That is really nice.
Their meeting could not have gone better. And this meeting, well, this was crucial, securing America's support, bringing an end to the war. What must have Downing Street thought when it all went so badly wrong? European leaders have in recent weeks been stepping up their commitment to supporting Ukraine, a collective message to Donald Trump that Europe is willing to pull its weight. But they cannot do it alone. The US is crucial.
To the way that the diplomacy was played out, I watched in utter despair. There's no way anybody in the White House intended it to be like that. That said, it's only 24 hours since we saw Starmer leaving the White House, having had a glowing reception from Trump. And although we've seen outright acrimony this evening, there's every chance that by tomorrow we will see something again. So we could have watched something really quite pivotal.
Earlier, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, met with military personnel in Lincolnshire after the government said it would increase defence spending. Hopeful at the time that meetings across the Atlantic were going well.
It's welcome that those meetings between President Trump and our Prime Minister Keir Starmer went so well in Washington. President Zelenskyy is now meeting with President Trump, and our Prime Minister is hosting a meeting with European allies in London at the weekend to talk about the next steps in terms of increasing defence spending across Europe so that we can protect our security here in Europe.
How fast things can change. President Zelenskyy will be here at Downing Street on Sunday meeting the Prime Minister. That conversation, the mood, the tone, it'll be muted because both men know that the task ahead of them has just got an awful lot harder. European leaders showed their support for Ukraine. French President Emmanuel Macron said, "Russia is the aggressor. Ukraine is the aggressed people. I think we were right to help Ukraine and sanction Russia 3 years ago and to continue to do so." The Polish Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, said, "Dear Ukrainian friends, you are not alone." The plan was that this meeting would shore up support for Ukraine, but that plan has changed in a dramatic way. Keir Starmer will hope his summit on Sunday will provide the support Ukraine so desperately needs.
And so for more on the reaction to the White House row, Nick Martin is in Downing Street. Our security and defense editor, Deborah Haynes, is in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, and Mark Stone is at the White House. Nick, let me start with you. Reaction defending Ukraine from across Europe tonight, and in the last few minutes from Downing Street, too.
That's right. I mean, you can only imagine what it was like inside Downing Street as the government watched that press conference descend in the way that it did. And as I said, President Zelenskyy is now on his way here to London for that summit of European leaders, and he will be on the steps here meeting Keir Starmer. Now, Number 10 have released a statement tonight. Let's just have a look at it. It's just come through. It says, the Prime Minister has tonight spoken to both President Trump and President Zelenskyy. He retains unwavering support for Ukraine and is doing all he can to find a path forward to a lasting peace based on sovereignty and security for Ukraine. The Prime Minister looks forward to hosting international leaders on Sunday, including President Zelenskyy. So we now know that come what may, that summit will go ahead. And really, it's more important than ever that it goes ahead, because President Zelenskyy will arrive here bruised and battered from that meeting with Donald Trump. And, you know, had it gone well, you can imagine the conversation inside Downing Street on Sunday would have been very congratulatory. There would have been a further step along the road to a lasting peace. Now you get the sense that it might be more consoling. But there is a potential new role for the Prime Minister now as a peacemaker between Zelenskyy and Donald Trump. And we'll have to see how that goes. But Sunday is crucial for President Zelenskyy to try and feel some support from Europe and to try and rebuild that disaster over in Washington, D.C.
Well, let's go to Deborah Haynes now in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. Deborah, what reaction in Ukraine to all of this?
There's been outrage across Ukrainian social media channels when they watched that humiliating sight of their wartime president being scolded like a schoolchild by Donald Trump and his vice president There's also been comments from the head of the armed forces about the importance of Ukrainian unity at this time. But there is also huge concerns. There are reports tonight about the White House considering maybe stopping all military aid to Ukraine. That would be an absolute disaster. Yes, under Joe Biden, a lot of military weapons and other support was rushed into this country before Donald Trump took office. But that is only here for a finite lifetime. And then as well, every day there is American intelligence support and other kind of assistance that helps the Ukrainians in their fight against Russia. Remember, this is still a war zone. And all the while, the scenes playing out in the White House would have gone down well in only one capital, and that is Moscow. You can only imagine how Vladimir Putin is feeling tonight, seeing Ukraine fall out so spectacularly with its most important ally, and now needing more than ever the Europeans to step up so that Ukraine can still stand firm.
Let's go to Mark Stone in Washington, D.C. now. Mark, Donald Trump has been speaking in the past few minutes. What's he been saying?
Yes, you might be able to hear the rotor blades of Marine One behind me on the other side on the South Lawn. He's about to take off for West Palm Beach for his weekend for Mar-a-Lago, and he has been speaking a few words. He said that he's not looking for anything protracted, he says. Trump says Zelenskyy has to make peace. He says we're looking for peace, not a 10-year war. Zelenskyy wants to fight, 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 so says Donald Trump, and that the meeting with Zelenskyy did not turn out great. Well, I think that is the understatement. What an absolutely extraordinary day, a day of history here at the White House, a day where we saw something unfold in the Oval Office that I think in modern history, certainly since the advent of cameras, has never been seen before. I think, you know, the job now for Europe, for Keir Starmer, in fact, in London on Sunday, is huge, it is bewildering, and it has been upturned over the course of today. As Nick said at the end of his report, Europe needs somehow to come around Zelenskyy and work out how they can support him and bring peace. But the honest truth is that Europe cannot stand alone with Ukraine. It needs the United States. The other point I think to make, which is you know, a consequence of today, Donald Trump may feel emboldened. He may feel as though what he did today or what unfolded today will give him some sort of sense of strength. And across parts of America, it certainly will. I was listening to some Americans outside the White House here talking earlier with some sort of sense of joy at the way that the president dealt with Zelenskyy. That is domestically. That is how he may well be received by a portion of America domestically. But it is also true that tonight, Donald Trump, the American administration, is deeply, deeply isolated, with Europe absolutely together with themselves against what Donald Trump, what happened in the Oval Office this afternoon.
Mark Stone at the White House, Deborah Haynes in Kyiv, and Nick Martin in Downing Street. Thank you all. In other news tonight, the Vatican has confirmed that the Pope's health has deteriorated. The head of the Catholic Church, who's been in hospital for 2 weeks now, suffered a coughing fit this afternoon, which led to a sudden worsening of his respiratory condition. Well, our correspondent Lisa Holland is at the Vatican right now. How worrying is this development, Lisa?
Well, it's 2 weeks since Pope Francis initially was taken into hospital for treatment for bronchitis, then deteriorated to pneumonia in both lungs. Now, it has to be said over recent days there have been small markers of improvement in the Pope's condition, but this afternoon into early evening, a Vatican statement, which I think certainly denoted a setback in his health. They said that he had suffered what's called a bronchospasm, which is essentially a coughing fit. It resulted in the Pope Pope vomiting, and then the Pope inhaled some of that vomit. Now, I have to say, having for a few days struggled to get information as to how the initial pneumonia was going, it was quite surprising to get this level of detail from the Vatican. Now, Vatican sources separately have been saying to us that this has been how they described it as quite a hard day. Clearly, some very worried people about what happened to the Pope this afternoon. And we understand that he, of course, remains on oxygen, but that now it's more intensive and he is requiring a kind of mask which is fitted over his face, covering both his nose and his mouth. So quite extensive oxygen required by the Pope. Put that in contrast to this morning's very first bulletin of the day, which I have to say was quite upbeat. It said that the Pope this morning had had breakfast, even that he was reading the newspapers. So certainly a setback revealed by the Vatican this evening.
Lisa Holland with the latest there in Vatican City. Lisa, thank you. Now, police in New Mexico say Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, tested negative for carbon monoxide poisoning. Their bodies were found at their home in Santa Fe on Wednesday. Investigators believe the couple had been dead for some time before their bodies were found. They're working to determine how they died, although they say they don't suspect foul play. Police have clashed with protesters on the second anniversary of Greece's worst ever train crash. Police fired tear gas at demonstrators who threw petrol bombs, demanding politicians be held to account for the disaster. 57 people were killed when a passenger train collided with a freight train in the north of the country in 2023. Now, you may have watched the powerful documentary which ran an hour ago. Sky News has uncovered new evidence in the case of Eleanor Williams, a young woman from Barrow, jailed for lying about being the victim of a grooming gang. Eleanor kept notes about the men she claimed abused her in a diary, one of whom has now been convicted for abusing other women and girls. Her mother says it's proof her daughter could be telling the truth. A warning, this report from our home editor Jason Farrell contains graphic images of injuries and descriptions of violence which you may find distressing.
Home video of Eleanor Williams that's not been seen before. It shows a joyful, playful teenager. A contrast to what was captured on police body cam. A battered and drugged girl. She would claim on Facebook she had been trafficked and raped by an Asian grooming gang.
You all right?
But she was found guilty of faking it, the injuries self-inflicted, an attempt to frame innocent men. 2 years on, and last week, 3 men from Eleanor's hometown in Barrow-in-Furness were sentenced. The Meir brothers were guilty of 62 offences, including sexual abuse of children, rape, intimidation and kidnap. And Sky News can reveal that in the months leading up to her Facebook post, Eleanor Williams kept a diary. And a key character in it was this man, Shah Joman Mir, now serving life for 40 counts of child abuse, known as Sarge.
Monday the 21st of October 2019. Had Snapchats from Zed saying Sarge needs me in Blackburn tomorrow. Said I had to get the train to Preston because they didn't know for definite where Sarge wanted me.
We have digital evidence these extracts were written around the time they're dated, months before Sarge was charged with any crimes. We're using the letter Z for the other men named.
I was too late. So Zed and Sarge were off with me. Sarge will be fuming with me for ignoring everyone. I went to Lancaster and met Sarge. He gave me a lift back to Barrow.
Sarge was not among the 5 men Eleanor was accused of lying about. But during her trial at Preston Crown Court, Sky News noted that she named Sarge and his brother Jay as being involved in her abuse. The judge at her trial said that diaries were all part of her fabrication. She was found guilty of faking evidence.
She is an unreliable witness. But there are other unreliable characters in this story. Men who've been convicted of sexually abusing other women and girls.
Barrow got branded to be a lying town. It's not. Grooming was happening here.
Elizabeth was a key witness in the recent case. She saw how the Mir brothers groomed underage girls for sex at the takeaway they used to work at in Barrow called Aisha's.
More men came down from Leeds. I know they'd come down for one thing, and that was for sex with girls. I'd say roughly 20, 30 girls I'd seen coming and going. They were well aware that they were still in school, and Sarge was sometimes picking girls up from the school as well.
The brothers' offences date up until 2010, but they weren't charged until 2020. Eleanor's mother believes in those 10 years they continued offending. She wrote an email to the police in 2018 which warned about Sarge.
The evidence is there that she was naming him, and I was flagging that she was naming him a long time before she was charged.
Do you think Sarge abused Ellie?
Yeah, I do. Why would she name him otherwise?
Well, she's named other people who she's been found guilty of perverting the course of justice about, so...
It doesn't mean to say that she's wrong about it all, though.
Cumbria police said all Eleanor's allegations were investigated thoroughly and there was no evidence of any involvement by the Mir brothers. They say allegations were proved to be lies, with evidence fabricated in an attempt to support those lies, resulting in convictions for multiple offences of perverting the course of justice. One of the men Eleanor falsely accused was businessman Mo Rami, and for a number of years Sarge worked in his restaurants.
I don't class them as human. You've had that person with you for so many years and they've just lied to you.
But he says Eleanor Williams is a serial liar.
Do I want to believe Ellie Williams could be telling the truth here on Sarge? I can't see anywhere how I could believe that girl.
But Elizabeth thinks it is significant Williams identified a now convicted sex offender.
Honest to God, if I'd have known she'd named, I would have went to the police personally myself and said, why are you calling this girl a liar?
Police say the conviction of the Mir brothers shows how seriously they take offences of this nature in Cumbria. They encourage any victim of abuse to come forward. Jason Farrell, Sky News.
And you can also listen to the latest episode of the Unreliable Witness podcast by scanning the QR code on the right of your screen. Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by the Daily Mirror columnist Susie Boniface and the political commentator Benedict Spence. Welcome both. As you can imagine, the row between Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelenskyy dominates. This is the take from the Daily Mail. The headline, a spectacle to horrify the world. We'll be right back.
Sky News get the full story first.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah. The battlefield is outside the barricades. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent. It's really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
Let's take you straight now to Washington Joint Base Andrews right now. That's Marine One. The president has just arrived. He's due to board Air Force One. He's going to be making his way to Mar-a-Lago, of course, a couple of hours after that pretty extraordinary meeting that he had with Volodymyr Zelenskyy. A little bit earlier, he did also make some comments at the White House. We're trying to bring you those, but he is now on his way to Mar-a-Lago. He did make some comments a little earlier when he was still at the White House. He said Zelenskyy did not look like a man who wanted to make peace. Also says, we are not going to keep fighting. A lot of questions now about where this leaves the war in Ukraine, although it has to be said that a lot of European leaders have issued statements in support of Zelenskyy. And of course, he is due to attend a summit organized in the UK where European leaders and other European leaders and Volodymyr Zelenskyy will attend. Okay, so we can now listen to the latest comments that Donald Trump made. Let's listen.
Think of that. And that's going to be a lot. It's going to be a tremendous investment. I guess the biggest investment anybody's ever made in the country at one time. But they're going to be investing a lot of money, $500 billion. We have many other companies have just announced they're coming in. A lot of it's because of how we're doing. We've done a great turnaround in a little more than 30 days, but the country's really doing well, really doing well. We're respected again all over the world. If you look, we had the Japanese Prime Minister. We had the Prime Minister yesterday of UK, as you know. We had the Prime Minister of India. We have another 20 Prime Ministers and Presidents wanting to come. And it's very good feeling. I think our country has really turned around. We had a meeting today, as you know, with President Zelenskyy, and I would say it didn't work out exactly great from his standpoint. I think he very much overplayed his hand. We're looking for peace. We're not looking for somebody that's going to sign up a strong power and then not make peace because they feel emboldened, and that's what I saw happening. I'm looking for peace. We're not looking to go into a 10-year war and play games. We want peace. And it was just my impression that if we do that, if we sign up, he's looking for something that I'm not looking for. He's looking to go on and fight. We're looking to end the death. 2,000 people died this week, soldiers, more than that, but 2,000 approximately people died this week. Young Ukrainians and Russians. And somebody would say, why do you care about Ukraine and Russian soldiers? I care about them. I care about everybody. And we're not doing that. Now, if we don't do anything, he's going to have to make peace, but he's dealing with a very weak set of cards. If we sign, he's dealing with a very strong set of cards, and then he doesn't want to make peace. So that's where we are. It's very simple. I'm not looking to get into anything protracted. I want immediate peace. President Putin is going to want to make, and he wants to end it. And you saw what I saw today. This is a man that wants to get us signed up and keep fighting, and we're not doing that, not for this country. So we're setting a lot of records. Economically, we're setting records, and I think every way we're setting records. One of the best is the right track, wrong track. You saw that. We're on the right track for the first time in over 27 years. People are impressed with that. The other thing is the feeling about our country. The feeling is great. It's up 48% on feeling on business. And that's the record we've never had. There's never been a record where we've ever gone up that much in such a short period of time. So we're doing really well. And I guess some of you are coming with us, and if you are, I hope you're going to have a good flight. What? What does Zelensky need to do to restart talks with you? He's got to say, I want to make peace. He doesn't have to stand there and say about Putin this, Putin that, all negative things. He's got to say, I want to make peace. I don't want to fight a war any longer. His people are dying. He doesn't have the cards, just so you understand it, okay? I can tell you.
Did you tell Zelensky to leave the White House?
I don't have to tell you that. Go ahead. I think you know the answer to that. What? Wait. Look, I don't trust or distrust anybody. I just want to get a deal done. And if the deal happens, good. But you can't embolden somebody that does not have the cards, and all of a sudden that person says, oh, well, now I can keep fighting. We're not going to keep fighting. You're going to get the war done or let them go and see what happens. Let them fight it out. I want anybody that's going to make peace. If he's capable of making peace, which he may or may not be, but I want somebody that's going to make peace. Again, he doesn't have the cards. When we sign up, he's got all of the cards. That doesn't mean he can fight. He's got to stop the fighting, stop the death. He's losing hundreds of thousands of soldiers. It's time to stop the death. Say it? Well, he says he wants it now. He wants to come back right now, but I can't do that. I can't do that.
Do you want immediate ceasefire, Mr. President?
They should have an immediate ceasefire. That was the other thing. He didn't want to do about ceasefire. A ceasefire could take place immediately. A contract, if you want to end the war, you sign up an agreement. That's going to take a period of time. It takes time. I want it to end immediately. And I think if you had a ceasefire, it would be a ceasefire, a real one, that would end it. But he doesn't want to do that. That's fine. Do a better deal. I want it to end immediately. I want a ceasefire now. He says, oh, I don't want a ceasefire. Well, all of a sudden, he's a big shot because he has the U.S. on his side. Either we're going to end it or let him fight it out. And if he fights it out, it's not going to be pretty. Because without us, he doesn't win, let me tell you. It doesn't matter what I'm considering. I'm just telling you. You saw what I saw today. That was not a man that wanted to make peace. And I'm only interested if he wants to end the bloodshed. Thank you very much, everybody.
That was Donald Trump speaking at the White House a little bit earlier, and there is Air Force One with the president taking off and heading for his his Florida home in Mar-a-Lago. Now, obviously, he spoke about the meeting that he had with Volodymyr Zelensky. He said Zelensky came with a weak set of cards, that Trump, wants immediate peace, and so does Putin. He also said to the assembled press, you saw what we saw today. He wants to continue fighting. He also mentioned that it was time to stop the death and that Zelensky wanted to come back to talk, but he couldn't come back now. And that what Zelensky has to say is that I want to make peace instead of bad-mouthing Putin. That you can't embolden someone who doesn't have any cards. And I want anyone capable of making peace. So those are the comments from Donald Trump. Hello there, you're watching the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the Daily Mirror columnist Susie Boniface and the political commentator Benedict Spence. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. Well, let's take a quick look to see what is on some of those front pages. Well, one story dominates. The Financial Times describes today's meeting between Presidents Trump and Zelensky as having broken down in acrimony. The Eye calls it a shouting match in which Mr. Trump tried to humiliate his Ukrainian counterpart on live TV. Here's the Express, their headline, "Bust Up leaves Trump's peace talks in crisis." The Telegraph quotes the US president as telling Mr. Zelensky, "Make a deal or we're out." The Mail calls the confrontation a spectacle to horrify the world. Now, according to the Mirror, it was a situation of shock and war. The Times has the simple headline, "Meltdown in Oval Office." And The Sun dubs Mr. Trump's residence the Fight House. And we are joined tonight by Susie Boniface and Benedict Spence. Welcome both. I mean, I think I must have watched bits of that news conference. It wasn't even a news conference, it was just a meeting. We never got to the news conference 5 or 6 times, and it really was astounding. Susie, if I can just start with you, just your reaction to what you saw.
Well, we've been talking about it for a couple of hours, so I think we've hit levels of hysteria and black humour about it, which probably isn't quite how people at home are feeling about it. But, I mean, the Mail headline has taken the temperature correctly. It is just horrifying to most people, I would have thought, regardless of how you vote or how you feel. The top of the Mail page there is saying how to tell you if you're drinking too much. How to tell you if you're not drinking enough is you're still remembering this and watching it play out again and again and again. And it's horrifying because earlier this week, whether you like Trump or not, I was of the opinion that, well, perhaps he has actually managed something good with all his talk and his tripe. He has actually dislodged a logjam, a war that was stagnating, support that was stagnating. He's invigorated it.
You mean
he's
earlier
moved it on.
in the week, the meetings with Macron
The meetings with Macron and then Starmer. Things seem to be all right, Trump and mad, but moving towards a positive place. And it was maybe going to get there. And yesterday, with all the stuff, I went, blimey, we've actually managed to pull this off. This is, we might, all right, that's OK. And then today, it's just gone bang. It's kind of like you've had an estranged family member, bitter row, and you've finally got everyone back around the table again for Sunday lunch, and everyone's just said, this will be fine. Let's just all not mention that thing. And there's something's happened. It's been very tense. Something's happened. It's just gone bang, and it's all got worse again. And I can't really see a way out of it.
I mean, Benedict, I'm guessing, you know, behind the scenes, confrontations like this probably happen, but it was the fact that it happened in front of cameras.
Yeah, I think the intervention of J.D. Vance was particularly unhelpful in the way that it was, I think actually the word smarmy is probably quite helpful in that it was almost a sort of a point-scoring exercise, almost as if to say, well, Russia has been bad, but look at what you've done as well, and I'm going to prove that how clever I am.
Any particular points he made that you think?
I mean, the point that he made about propaganda exercises, about sort of massaging casualty figures and stuff like that, I mean, it's a war, people do this, but I think we're all pretty firmly on. Well, at this stage, most Western countries have decided what side they are on. They are on the side not of the aggressor, but of the side that would like to maintain its sovereignty and its liberty. And I think that that was in particularly bad taste from J.D. Vance to do that. And what I thought was very telling was the way that he sort of framed it as, you come here to the Oval Office and you disrespect the United States, talking very much in a sort of an imperial manner, as if you ought to be sort of deferring to us. Whereas most people, I go back actually to something that the Singaporean foreign minister said a couple of weeks ago, which is that the US no longer sort of posits itself as a liberator or a guarantor of freedom. It is a landlord that is now demanding rent from its former allies. And that, I think, is very much the tone that is being set, not just with Ukraine, but with Canada, Mexico, Denmark, whoever it might be. It is coming around, it has got the collection tin, and it is rattling, and it is saying, you owe us stuff. And that doesn't sit very well, I think, with most European states, especially with Ukraine, which is, you know, down the barrel of a gun, literally, from the Russians. But it should be a real wake-up call, really, after everything else that's gone on, to most European nations. These are not necessarily your friends in the White House anymore. They might talk a good game, but actually, they are interested in very different things to what you are.
Let's just pull up the front page of the Weekend. Another headline, shouting match in Oval Office. Trump tries to humiliate Zelensky live on TV. Susie, I'll start with you, but a question to both of you. Do you think Zelensky played it badly? I mean, we all know what Trump, perhaps J.D. Vance is a bit of a surprise, but we all know what Trump is like. Should Zelensky have been more patient, do you think?
Look, Zelensky, there's two things that went into this. The first is that Zelensky, I think, walked into the Oval Office ready for a fight. He went in armed with photographs of atrocities he said were caused by Russians and showed them to the cameras. Now, to do that, when you know you're having your little sort of 10-minute press thing in there with the president, is just asking for conflict. And that is, we must have security. We cannot have compromises with people like this and showing the pictures. I think Trump realised at that point, if he hadn't done previously, that this man was not going to sign the deal. And if you're going to come all this way and have all this effort and not sign the deal, Trump's going to look bad. So Trump and then Vance decided to tag team and just take him out and humiliate him. I think that's what happened. But also, we've got to remember that a lot of this stuff starts back in 2019 when Trump was president last time and he rang up Zelenskyy and said, I'm withholding $400 billion worth of aid unless you can find evidence that Hunter Biden is corrupt and has been doing stuff in Ukraine he shouldn't have been. Zelenskyy couldn't find that evidence, didn't find that evidence because it doesn't exist. And then subsequently, Joe Biden won the election and Trump was impeached for trying to get a foreign country to interfere with the US election. He's never forgiven Zelenskyy for that. And so he, too, started on this foot of going, I hate this guy, before you've even started the meeting. So they're both ready for it to go. But basically, this is a gangster with a grudge because this guy didn't whack the guy he wanted him to 5 years ago.
I think there is some truth in that with Trump. When it comes to Vance and the rest of the sort of the MAGA movement of the Republican Party, I think that they've gone back in time to a period of US isolationism. And the whole sort of Make America Great Again is not so much about asserting American dominance on the world stage, it is about retreating back into America's own sphere of influence. And I think that that's, from a personal perspective, I think it's a very foolish thing to do. They have sort of accepted and embraced the multipolar moment, almost as if they're saying, yes, China and Russia can have a slice of the pie and we're fine for that to happen. I think that that's a lot of what is informing the decisions that are being made now in this Trump administration. I think that Trump's own ego absolutely informs a lot of this. But what stands out to me is Vance, who I think will be the president of the United States at some point, and that is the ideological future of the movement going forward. And that is very much looking at the US no longer as the global empire that is able to assert its dominance on the world stage, but actually sort of looks at countries like Russia and China and says, well, this is our sphere of influence and this is what they get up to. And if we can take a slice of this Ukrainian pie, we can take some of their natural resources, that's fine. But these are other things that are entirely up for somebody else. It's that way of almost sort of positioning yourself, saying, the Russians are bad, but also you've done some bad things, and this is not entirely to do with us. That is what I think stands out to me. And it is a very, if you like, pre-Second World War American attitude to say, oh, well, there are good people and bad people on both sides. That is an incredibly foolish thing to do. If you want your way of life to continue, you cannot accept people who have entirely different worldviews just, rampaging around the world and doing what they want. That is inevitably what will happen. And it is, again, it seems that we're sort of repeating that American attitude towards geopolitics, that you can just allow other people to do what they want.
But do you think tempers flared? I mean, they obviously did, but do you think any of it was planned?
I think what J.D. Vance said was certainly planned. I think he probably prepared that. I don't think that Donald Trump's response...
What specifically did J.D.
As I say, I think the whole sort of trying to needle Volodymyr Zelenskyy by calling him effectively a propagandist, because we've had the whole thing of Trump saying, you're a dictator, and then going, did I say that? I don't remember, that doesn't sound like me. But then turning around and saying, oh, well, it's propaganda, and we all know what that means. It's effectively accusing somebody of lying about war crimes, about atrocities, which we all know are going on, but to sort of cast doubt on the suffering of Ukrainian people, to say, it's not entirely true, though, is it? You're making it up. There are some aspects of it, of course, that the Ukrainians are massaging, cazalty figures, of course, for good reason.
Zelenskyy raised the point. There are around 20,000 at least, if not more, 10 times that, children that have been forcibly abducted,
something that's been forgotten.
Forcibly adopted. America is one of the countries that has signed up to a coalition to make sure those children are repatriated, and very few of them have found a legal route home yet. Most of them have got a new name and they're living in Russia whether they like it or not. Now, if any other country in the world had had 20,000 or more children forcibly abducted and renamed and rehomed, I mean, there is no way that Trump would be OK if that was American children that were in Canada or in Mexico.
Yeah.
And so and he pointed that out, and it's quite reasonable to point that out. There should be no peace with a country that has done that unless returning those children is part of the deal. That has to be part of it.
He was trying to point things like that out, and then he gets asked about what he's wearing and why he's not wearing a suit.
Exactly. I said, why haven't you said thank you? Like he's some 4-year-old child.
He's also said thank you many, many times to the Americans, just not in that particular way.
It's entirely... As we sort of were touching on, it's very facile. If your country is at war and you are trying to broadcast the message to people that I'm at war and that, that there are, multiple sort of threats to my life and that I'm a war leader and that I'm not necessarily, the sort of the slick Washington figure or something like that. Well, why would you expect it to be wearing a suit or something like that? And again, to go back to what Vance was saying, it's disrespectful for you to turn up in the Oval Office. This is about imperialism. This is about asserting your dominance, which is desperately ironic given that that form of imperialism is what the Republican Party accused the Democrats of doing, saying, well, you're trying to sort of create colour revolutions around the world and trying to create this new image of what you believe the West should be, to then reimpose that very same sense of imperialism, saying, well, you're effectively an extension of our empire. You should be kowtowing to us.
These guys feel a bit different about kings than the people who created the Republican Party. But, the whole situation was, I think they both went into it prepared for a fight to start with. If someone turns up at your doorstep and you go, oh, you've dressed up, then you're plainly just waiting for it. And you hate each other to start with. You're looking for a problem. It's the opposite of when Macron or Starmer went there, where you're trying to find some common ground. They went into it in a different way, and then it's absolutely just ramped up. And clearly, Trump has lost his temper at some point. He's clearly shouting. Zelenskyy has also lost his temper. He is trying to shout over Donald Trump. And anyone knows that's just not going to get you anywhere.
But what I would say is, after this many years of war, I don't really have a lot of sympathy for Donald Trump, and I have all the sympathy for Volodymyr Zelenskyy. If anybody is allowed to lose his temper in this situation, it's absolutely him.
And the disrespect to call him halfway across the planet, to sit him in there and lecture him about not having more respect for you, because when you've literally been in the job 5 minutes and said, we're going to cut all your funding and we're going to make...
He's going to be heading back, Zelenskyy back to Europe, because, of course, there's that summit on Sunday here in the UK called by Keir Starmer. Let's just look at a few front pages at the Daily Express. Bust-up leaves Trump's peace talks in crisis. Benedict, where do you think we stand, both between the Ukraine and the US, but also these talks about Europe?
I mean, this is part of the difficulty about all of this, which is that Europe... How many years are we now into this conflict? 3 years?
3, exactly.
And there has been no real shift in Europe's attitude towards its own defence. And if you were to sort of look at this very neutrally and say, OK, do the United States have a point? That is the point that they do have, which is that European countries are not taking their own defence seriously. We're still here with a war in mainland Europe, and we still have European nations dragging their feet over what this means. We still have Britain dragging its feet over actually what its own defence actually means. And this doesn't just this doesn't just boil down to how much you spend on the Ministry of Defence. It comes down to food policy. It comes down to energy policy. Actually, Russia does not fight wars in a conventional sense. It does graze own warfare very well. And yet we still have all of these countries going, well, this is a bit tricky, isn't it? It's not a serious approach.
Susie, we're going to have to leave it there. For now, we will, of course, be talking about this again in the 11. For the moment, Susie and Benedict, thank you. Now let's take a look at the weather.
A bright start and always a warm welcome. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
It's the start of the meteorological spring. This weekend, it'll be mostly settled with overnight frost and fog possible. There'll be a wet start in the northwest, but it will be dry elsewhere with a widespread frost. Expect some freezing fog patches too, mainly across eastern England. Now, that fog will lift through the morning to leave plenty of sunshine across England and Wales. Elsewhere, though, it will be cloudier with rain easing southeast, but northern and central Scotland and northwest Ireland will turn drier and brighter.
A bright start and always a warm welcome. Qatar Airways sponsors the weather.
Coming up next on Sky News at 11, more on that extraordinary showdown at the White House between President Trump and President Zelenskyy. Stay with us.
We're rolling.
Welcome to the world.
our new podcast. It's starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Sky News get the full story first.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah. The battlefield is outside the barricades. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent. It's really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.